One of the tragic things about being a reader is that one day you'll be gone and there will be series left unread, but not the 12 series I'm talking about in today's video. Here are 12 book series that I'm definitely getting started in 2025. Generally, I like to avoid popular series that everyone is reading here on BookTube because I think at my core, I'm a rebel or a hipster or something. But if I'm being honest, FOMO is hitting me. I usually like to chart my own course. I usually like to go my own way in terms of what I'm reading. But this list of 12 different series includes a lot of series that a lot of people are giving a lot of love to here on BookTube, as well as some unknown series I'm certain you've never heard of. We got 5 fantasy series, 6 sci-fi series, and 1 contemporary fiction trilogy. So let's just get right to it. If you happen to have read any of these series, tell me what you thought about them. I go into my reads blind, and I know very little about all 12 of these, so I think next year should be full of a lot of surprises. Hopefully, they're good. Series number 1, The Three-Body Problem. All I know about this trilogy is that it's a post-apocalyptic alien invasion story taking place over, I think, a lot of years. A lot of my favorite booktubers talk very highly about this trilogy, but I know very little about it. I've heard the first book is a little harder to get into, but the trilogy gets better and better. I picked up the first 2 installments at my local library used bookstore for only 50 cents each. It was a steal. How could I avoid giving this series a try? I love post-apocalyptic fiction, but I've read very little. Perhaps I've actually read no alien invasion post-apocalyptic stories ever. So this will be a little out of my wheelhouse, but it's post-apocalyptic adjacent, so I'm sure I will enjoy this trilogy. I've been warned about the first installment, but after that, it's smooth sailing. So yeah, I'm excited about The Three-Body Problem. Series number 2, The Library Trilogy by Mark Lawrence. What do I know about the Library Trilogy? Very little. I know it takes place in this giant, powerful, secretive library, and that's about it. I know many booktubers talk about how philosophical and thought-provoking and emotionally moving it is, and that excites me. Because I've read 4 of Mark Lawrence's other trilogies, he hits me in the feels. And I'm very excited to read this trilogy along with other people because I feel like Mark Lawrence has not been given all the respect that he deserves because his Book of the Ancestor trilogy, a lot of people talked about it on BookTube like 4 years ago, but none of it really caught fire like the first book in this trilogy. I look forward to starting it, reading the first 2 installments, and hopefully reading the 3rd and final installment along with a lot of you guys here on BookTube. Series number 3, the Wizard Knight series by Gene Wolfe. It was either this or the Book of the New Sun, but I've heard that's a very hard series to tackle, and I really want to start series next year that I know I'm going to finish, and I know that I'm going to finish rather easily. Nick from Nick Reads Fantasy speaks so highly about this duology. Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? I heard there's a lot of religious symbolism and religious themes. I love that. And I'm excited to see how many of the connections I'm able to make while reading it. I loved Narnia growing up. I love allegorical fiction. I heard that Gene Wolfe's Catholic faith very much influenced this duology, and it should be an exciting, intellectually compelling read. Series number 4, the Sun Eater series. All I know about this is that it's an epic, amazing, intellectually stimulating, thought-provoking, moving space opera. I love space operas. The Mass Effect trilogy is my favorite video game franchise of all time, but surprisingly, I've read little to no space operas. I'm excited for Sun Eater. I'm excited to read this along with a lot of other people who are picking it up in 2025 because the series concludes next year. And that's an exciting thing. When I talk about FOMO, most of my FOMO was because of this series that I've been putting off for 2 years. I'm finally getting it started in 2025 because all my favorite booktubers love this series, and I look forward to seeing what all the hype is about. Series number 5, The Fen of Art Tapestry by Guy Gavriel Kay. This has been on the TBR for 4 years now. I've heard that Kay has some of the best prose, the most beautiful lyrical writing in all of fantasy, and that excites me. I love reading books that are just a joy to read. I love the beauty of the written word. I love the beauty of crafting the perfect sentence that helps the reader become even more immersed in the story, which is one of the main reasons why there's going to be no Brandon Sanderson on this list. not to throw shade. The Fen of Art Tapestry is cool because I know it's inspired by Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Our characters go through a magic pathway, a magic portal of some sort, and they're in this fantasy setting. I'm excited for this trilogy. I look forward to finally giving it a go in 2025. Speaking of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, I have the Lord of the Rings. It seems blasphemous that I never read this trilogy. I read The Hobbit in high school and in middle school. I actually read this book twice, and I loved it. But I remember 8th grade me trying to read The Fellowship of the Ring and hitting a lot of resistance. It is a much harder read. But now that I'm much older than I was in 8th grade, I'm a much more experienced reader, especially when it comes to reading fantasy. I think it's about time I finally read The Lord of the Rings. I look forward to diving into this early in January and finishing this massive journey. There's a reason why people say this is the most influential fantasy book series of all time. I've heard that it is timeless. I want to see if it holds up. I want to see how it compares to a lot of the modern fantasy that I'm reading. And I look forward to reading the stories that influenced my favorite film franchise of all time. Next, we have the Toown Trilogy by Frederick Bachman. Bachman is one of my favorite authors. His book, A Man Called Uva, is one of my favorite novels of all time. And all I know about the Toown Trilogy is that it takes place in a small town where there's a hockey team or a soccer team, and one of the star players gets into some controversy, and that's all I know. I've heard that this will hit me in the feels. I've heard that I will cry, I will laugh, I'll go through the entire emotional journey in this trilogy. It's contemporary fiction. I generally read fantasy or science fiction, so maybe it'll be a little more slow-paced, maybe it won't be as interesting or exciting as a lot of the other series on this list, but I know without a shadow of a doubt that I'm finishing this trilogy in 2025 because Bachman, everything he writes is gold. There has been nothing from him that I have not at least really liked, but I've loved almost everything that I've read from him of the 5 or 6 works that I've given a go. Next, we have the Echo Saga by Philip C. Quantrill. This 9-book epic made up of 3 trilogies, a trilogy of trilogies. I love saying that. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I don't know too many people here on BookTube that have finished this entire 9-book epic, but I want to be one of the first. I think 2025 is going to be the year of Red Rising and Sun Eater, but I think 2026 is going to be all about the Echo Saga, and I think I'm going to be a little ahead of the curve when it comes to this series, and I'm excited for it. I love epic fantasy. I love massive epics. I love multiple POV characters, and I think the Echo Saga is going to be a good fit for me. Speaking of Red Rising, I'm giving the Red Rising Saga a go in 2025. I've been hesitant to give this series a try for several years. It's been on the TBR for 4 or 5 years at this point. But because it was ongoing, I did not want to get too emotionally invested and be forced to wait around every year for each installment. But it's finally ending in 2025. Now is the perfect time to dive into this series. When I talk about FOMO, I'm mostly talking about Sun Eater, but a big portion of that, a close second place, is the Red Rising Saga. I look forward to adding my voice to the discussion about this series. I hope I love it. I hope I can go through all the emotional highs and lows with you guys, and I hope the author can stick the landing. If a series that is this hyped, this successful, this popular can stick the landing, I think it will truly be a classic. I'm sure it'll be considered a classic many years from now, and I'm excited to finally be able to jump into this fandom with both feet in. The next series I'm going to talk about is a trilogy, and I've heard no one mention this trilogy here on BookTube, but I love hidden gems, so I had to give this series a go. The Vagrant by Peter Newman is a very unique read. The writing style, the voice, the tone is unlike anything I've given a try. I started the first installment of this book 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I liked it, but it was taking a lot of my mental bandwidth. So I decided to table this series and try it again in 2025. I think I'm going to pick it up in the second half of 2025 because I found it to be super unique. Our protagonist never says a word. I think our protagonist is a mute. There's a very cool goat character from my understanding. There's a talking sword. This series is a fever dream. I've heard it's very random. I heard it's very unique. And I love unique fever dream stories. Next, we have Adrian Tchaikovsky's Final Architecture Trilogy. I've heard that this is the closest you can get to the Mass Effect series in the written form. And that's super exciting because Mass Effect is my favorite video game franchise. I know that Adrian Tchaikovsky is an author of massive range. I've read 7 or 8 of his novellas, and I've loved or enjoyed all of them. His book, A House of Open Wounds, and his book, The Children of Time, are very well thought of, held in very high acclaim, but I don't hear anyone talking about this trilogy. But people that have read it, when I look at the reviews, say that it's a lot of good fun, that it's so different from a lot of his other works, because Adrian Tchaikovsky can really write any story. And I look forward to seeing his take on the epic space opera story, and if it could do anything to scratch the Mass Effect itch that I have waiting for the next Mass Effect video game to come out, then this will be a series that my time is well spent reading. And finally, series number 12, the Adon Trilogy by Dr. Philip Chase. I love BookTube. I love all my favorite booktubers. And one of my favorite booktubers is Dr. Philip Chase, our own Dr. Fantasy. When I heard that he finally published his series that he's been working on for over a decade, I knew I was going to read this series eventually. But I've been seeing nothing but positive reviews here on BookTube from various booktubers of different tastes, all singing praises about this trilogy. I knew it was going to be on the agenda for 2025. I can't wait to dive into this trilogy. I can't wait to give this series a go. All I know is that it's very much inspired by traditional fantasy. I know that the final installment is really damn good. I trust booktubers in general. When all of us have a positive opinion about a series, it's got to be good. So I look forward to finally reading the Adon Trilogy, even though it's only been out for a short while. I've been, biting at the bit, waiting in anticipation to finally give this series a go, and 2025 is the year. Honestly, I have a bit of a problem. I'm probably going to start more than just these 12 series in 2025, but these are the priority series. These are the series I'm definitely going to give a try in 2025. I look forward to all these beautiful stories, these epic narratives, to being immersed in these different worlds. I look forward to seeing what the stories have in store for me. I look forward to seeing what all these different authors, how they're going to affect who I am as a person, because I'm not going to be the same person at the start of these journeys that I am at the end of them. And that's a super exciting thing. So that's what I'm going to read. What are you guys reading next year?